Hello. I thought I'd do a video on this particular individual as my first reaction video because my audience, most of them, haven't heard of this particular individual and don't really know about all of this batshit crazy shit that I dive into on a regular basis. So, let's watch, shall we?
Hi there!
Hey.
Are you tired of being called a racist, a misogynist, a white supremacist, a Nazi, a homophobe, and a transphobe?
Well, 1, I'm not any of those things. 2, I never get called any of those things. And 3, according to most of the people on your side, I can't be some of those things because reasons. So no, I'm not really tired of it.
Then you need to learn how to be a politically correct bigot.
Oh, what? You mean like you? 'Cause I've seen some of your videos before and you kinda are.
You see, the days of being able to shout racist and sexist slurs from the rooftops are over. People are too politically correct now. It's like for some reason people don't like blatant hatred being spewed everywhere. I don't get it.
Yeah, spewing that shit from the rooftops was never really accepted to begin with, so... And there's a lot of things you don't get.
But anyway, because of this new climate of tolerance and acceptance, you have to be more careful with your words if you happen to be a skeptical, rational, free-thinking, patriotic American like me.
You've always had to be careful with your words, no matter who you are, no matter where you are. That's just the way it's always been. Not just because of snowflakes like you, but because, yeah, sometimes people say stupid shit. You gotta think before you open your mouth so you don't say stupid shit. Unfortunately, you didn't think before you opened your mouth. And I'm not American, so not being like you in any way, shape, or form is okay with me.
Don't worry though, I've got your back. Here's how you can learn to be a politically correct bigot.
I'm listening. Let's see this shit. It's gotta be good.
Number 1, don't call black people the N-word, just call them thugs.
Who the hell you calling a thug, you rusty-ass, musty-ass, busted-ass, basic-ass bitch?
We all know that white people should be allowed to say the N-word, but in today's political climate, you just can't. Too many triggered snowflakes out there. So instead, just call them thugs. It's just as racist on the inside, but sounds less racist on the outside.
The word thug is only racist to a racist like you who uses it to describe all black people. 'Cause thug is basically a word for criminal. There's Yakuza thugs who happen to be Japanese. There's triad thugs who happen to be Chinese. There's mafia thugs who happen to be Italian, which in your worldview is white. And then there's gangbangers who are commonly referred to as thugs who can be black, white, Hispanic, and any other race. So don't try and pull that bullshit, you're racist bigot.
Number 2, instead of saying that you hate people of color, just say that you support national security. The trick here is that nobody can disagree with wanting national security, so anyone who criticizes you will look like an asshole.
I'm a person of color, and I support national security. Where's your argument now? National security is basically, keep out the people who want to kill me from other countries. Yeah, there's people in my country already who are born and raised and part of the indigenous population who want to kill me. But don't add to the problem by not checking who's coming in.
Then you can build a huge wall on the southern border and ban people from the Middle East and say it's for national security, even though those things won't actually make us any safer. The important part is they look like they'll make us safer, and they'll keep people of color out. It's a win-win.
The whole build a wall thing, it'll slow down the massive influx of people coming in completely unchecked, because you'll have to check them if they're going through checkpoints. Yeah, there's going to be holes in those walls called gates to check. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do on any border. Doesn't matter what country you live in. And as to the whole banning people from the Middle East, no, it's not all of the Middle East. It's just 7 countries that Barack Obama, during his 8-year administration, was bombing the fuck out of. Naturally, those people are going to be a little bit mad at America for doing that. jets, so you kind of want them to come down, cool their jets, sort out who's who to make sure that people who are mad at America for doing it aren't getting in for a little bit of revenge. It's a smart idea, huh? And something quite necessary. It's something that both Trump and Clinton actually said to do, because America's been bombing the hell out of those countries since Clinton 10, 20 years ago. So, just saying.
Number 3, if you want to lead a harassment campaign against someone, make sure that you display a disclaimer saying that you don't condone harassment. You see, an old-fashioned harassment campaign is seen as offensive nowadays. Something about bullying marginalized people or some shit like that.
Yeah, no one's actually sparking harassment campaigns against you. I don't know who you think is, but nobody's actually doing that shit. We know they're not actually doing that shit because, as you said, they have disclaimers telling people not to do that shit.
So instead of telling people what you're doing, just do all of the same things, but don't say that you're doing it.
Can I get a translator for that word salad?
Essentially, you want to make it easy for your hundreds of thousands of followers to go harass someone by giving them all the information they need, but not actually directly telling them to do it.
Much though I'd like it, I don't have mind control powers. I can't make people go out and do shit. Okay? And as for the hundreds of thousands of followers, you're adding a lot of zeros to my itty bitty 18, aren't ya?
If you make it easy enough for them, they'll do it whether you tell them to or not.
And there's the rub. People will do anything they want to, whether you tell them to or not. And yeah, and making it easy for people to do those things, here's the thing. When people don't put your video link in the description, you complain that people are taking you out of context because people aren't going back to watch the actual video to see what you actually said. And when people do put the video link in the description so that people can watch the video to see exactly what you said to get all the context, you then complain if those people who've now watched your video criticize you because you call it harassment. So it's a lose-lose. No matter what we do, you're going to complain in some way, shape, or form. You're going to either complain about context or harassment. Context or harassment. And here's the thing. People will be able to find your video whether we put it in that description or not, and they'll still call your ideas bullshit, because that's what they are. Have better arguments? Won't get no criticism. Won't get no criticism? You don't have any excuse to call anything harassment.
And this way, you can avoid any responsibility. It's like putting a really tasty treat in front of a hungry dog and then telling the dog that it shouldn't eat the treat. It's still gonna do it, but then it's not your fault because you told it not to.
Yeah, people are gonna do whatever the hell they want, whether you tell them not to or not. And it is not your fault because, again, we don't have powers of mind control yet. We can't control other people's actions. Yeah. So I could tell people not to do shit all I want. They're still gonna do it because they feel like it. And I don't particularly like the dog analogy, but yeah, basically, people are gonna do whatever the hell they want to, and there's nothing you can do to stop them. Whether it's picking on somebody else or following along with your cult.
Number 4, don't call people feminazis, just call them feminist extremists.
People call feminists feminazis when they're acting like a bunch of Nazis, thought policing other people, telling people what they can and cannot do, can and cannot say, can and cannot wear. That's Nazi, and telling men specifically where, when, and how they can and can't do things, just because there's some little niggling inkling in their own minds that whatever men do, doesn't matter what, there's some sexism or misogyny. Like, men aren't allowed to work a certain amount of hours anymore because they're going to get paid more than you because you're not working the same hours yourself. That's being a Nazi. And feminist extremists, those are the ones who go and pick on men constantly. Like when men are trying to discuss things like their own health issues, like testicular and prostate cancer, and the ridiculously high male suicide rate. They just want to talk about things like that, and You'll find protesters out in the streets. People will be pulling fire alarms to get them out of the building so that they can scream at them in public. They'll have bomb threats about it. Those are extremists. And those are also feminazis. So yeah, they both work for good reasons. Words have meaning for good reasons. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean the word should go away.
Back in the day, feminazi was a perfectly good insult. You could dismiss the arguments of any annoying feminist with just one word.
You can dismiss a lot of the arguments of crazy feminists by having better arguments. And if they're acting like a feminazi, well...
But now, thanks to PC culture, we have to use two words. Feminist extremist.
It ain't PC culture. It's just a distinction from the crazy feminist to the batshit crazy feminist. Right now, we've got the batshit crazy feminist.
Still, it's a good way to ignore the concerns of anyone who criticizes you, so I highly recommend using it.
Yeah, their only criticism is that I have internalized misogyny if I don't think I'm a victim and actually agree with some of the men's rights issues.
Number 5. Instead of saying that you hate trans people, just say that you wouldn't date them. Thanks to all the liberal, leftist, communist transgenders out there, it's now not okay to hate someone just because they're trans.
Just because somebody doesn't want to date you doesn't mean they hate you. Some people just don't want a dick.
That's ridiculous. You know it, I know it, we both know it.
Yeah, so is you saying that people hate you for being trans, and that's why they don't want to date you. No, they just don't want your dick.
So to get around this, just say you would never date a trans person. It's a good way of getting your message across without explicitly saying it. Plus, if anyone criticizes you, you can just call them a rapist and claim that they're trying to force you to have sex with a transgender person. Because remember, implicit bias is fake news.
But you kinda are trying to force people to have sex with a trans person by constantly trying to guilt people into having sex with a trans person. That is manipulation, that is coercion, and coercion is force. And force is rape. And rape is bad.
Number 6. Don't call yourself a white supremacist. Just say that racism doesn't exist and that people of color are ruining our country.
I'm black, so I can't be a white supremacist because it's that stupid as fuck. And I have never in my entire life heard anyone say that racism doesn't exist. And as for people of color ruining our country... I've never heard anyone say that either. Where the hell are you getting this?
White supremacist has all sorts of negative connotations now. White nationalist is sometimes okay, but not always.
Yeah, white supremacists and white nationalists have always had bad connotations. So... And the people you're calling a white supremacist and a white nationalist most often... aren't. And that's the problem. That's why people get a bit tiffy when you call them that, because you're calling something they aren't, which they're considered very ugly words and could have very damaging consequences on their lives. Firing, violence, things of that nature.
The easiest way around this is just to say that you have white pride and to complain about reverse racism and white genocide.
Okay, I agree that white pride is an idiotic concept, but so is black pride, Asian pride, Latino pride, etc., etc., etc. How are you proud of something that you couldn't do anything about? How can you possibly be proud of something you were born with? That's stupid as fuck. You should be proud of your accomplishments. So yeah, it doesn't make any damn sense. And the whole white genocide thing is kind of self-inflicted, if it is even a thing, so, Reverse racism isn't a thing. It's just racism. Anybody of any race could be racist to anybody else of any other race. That's just how it works. Yes, even towards white people. You can be racist towards white people, because all racism is discrimination and antagonism and dislike and distrust of another race based on the idea that your race is superior. That's it. That's it. And you'll find many a black person these days who are spouting the whole black supremacist bullshit against white people and beating the crap out of them because they're white. That's racist as fuck.
Talk about the evils of multiculturalism.
Multiculturalism is a failed experiment. It doesn't work. Why? Because all the cultures remain separate, especially in you guys' ideologies and plans. This race isn't allowed to use this thing because it came from this race, and this race isn't allowed to have this hairstyle because it came from this race, and this race isn't allowed to have this food because it's part of this race. So nobody's learning anything from anybody else. Nobody's sharing their culture. Nobody's getting along, basically, because everything is different and nothing is allowed to be shared. That's not how a society works. A society works by melting together, by blending, by becoming one, so that they have one culture eventually. One culture that is a mix of all the diverse cultures within it. That is how the world's supposed to work. That's how it's worked for thousands of years. It's only recently where you don't want it to do anything like that. That's called segregation. We kind of tried to get rid of that. We got rid of that mostly. Why are you bringing it back? Do tell, because it's unnerving.
Laugh about the people of color who will die because of environmental racism.
Environmental racism is not a thing. People live in bad environments when they're cheap because they're poor. You have white people living in horrendous environments. Is it racism against them? No, they're just poor. I mean, look around most of Eastern Europe. It's poor as fuck. The conditions are horrible. The health conditions are even worse. The life expectancies are horrible, and they're all white. Is it environmental racism against them? No. They're just poor. Poverty is not racism.
And yell at people when they don't speak English.
I've never heard anyone ever yelling at somebody because they couldn't speak English. I've heard of people getting frustrated with people who can't speak the language of the country that they've moved to, that they've settled in. But I've never heard of anyone actually yelling at somebody for not speaking the language. That's just stupid and it's false.
But if anyone calls you a white supremacist, you deny it.
You deny it because it's not true. And no racist has ever denied being a racist. Simple.
The label might fit, but it's not politically correct.
The label doesn't fit, and that's the issue.
Number 7. Instead of saying you support the alt-right, say that you're a centrist who just wants to hear both sides.
I'd like to hear both sides, and I'm center left. So, just slightly left of center. But it would be nice to hear both sides, because when you hear both sides, you get to hear what kind of arguments they have. You had to make up your own mind. And if you hear some stupid shit coming out of either side, you get to criticize either side. But the thing is, the stupid shit is coming mostly out of the left.
This one's easy. People love centrists, even though it's a logical fallacy to claim that the two extremes are bad and the center is good. It's called an argument to moderation. Look it up.
Extremes are always bad. That's why we call them extremes. 'Cause they're bad. Extreme right is bad. Extreme left is bad. So being somewhere in the middle can be okay. Might not always be good, but it's not batshit crazy.
But if you say you're a centrist, nobody can say that you're actually alt-right. And then all you have to do is ignore the left and constantly give a platform to the right. Make sure you challenge the left on all their ideas, but allow the alt-right to speak freely. It's genius, really.
Your problem is that we're not ignoring you. Your problem is that we are listening to you, listening to the right, hearing both sides, saying, yeah, the right isn't coming up with half as crazy shit as the left is just now, so let's comment on that because they're the ones in mainstream power, unfortunately.
Say that you support free speech and hearing out both sides. People love that shit, and they won't even see how it works to empower the alt-right.
Yeah, people challenge ideas from both sides. It's just that there's less crazy ones coming out of the right. The left has got some crazy shit that's not backed up by anything scientific or factual. The right tends to do that sometimes, but not as often as the left these days. In the last 2 years, you guys have gone absolutely mental.
And that, my friends, is how you can be a politically correct bigot. I hope this advice was helpful for you, and if you appreciate it, then please press that thumbs down button. I know it seems counterintuitive, but a thumbs down is the politically correct thumbs up.
Essentially, this video that this person made is a whole pile of salt about people criticizing the insane ideas that have come out of her mouth over the last 2 years. Everything that this person has ever said has been debunked before this person said it many times, or it's just been completely insane, and people don't really react very well to insane ideas and people spouting nonsense that isn't based in science, isn't based in fact, has no relevancy whatsoever. So, according to this particular person, and many people like them, criticism is apparently harassment. And they get a lot of criticism, and the result is this passive-aggressive, salty video. This is what I watch sometimes, folks. So, tell me what you think in the description below, in the comments below. And have a good evening, children. This is my first reaction video. Tell me what you think. Like, share, subscribe, all that good shit. And maybe have a little peek at the Patreon. And I'm on Minds and VidMe, so have a look. Bye, children.